New to NBC News, House Republicans are set to send their articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to the Senate this coming Tuesday, despite finding no evidence of high crimes or misdemeanors being committed. And just days after Republican senators requested more time to build their case for an impeachment trial. Joining us now, Congressional Hispanic Caucus Chair, Democratic Congresswoman Nanette Barragan of California. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Very good to see you. Do you think that the Senate should actually be taking up these articles of impeachment? Do you, or should Leader Schumer just, Majority Leader Schumer just, get rid of it, dismiss them upon receiving them?
Well, it's a political stunt, and we know that. So I think it is time for Schumer to just dismiss them and have a vote. It's really not necessary. Even Republicans, we know, in the Senate and in the House have said this is a political endeavor and there's nothing there. So let's get to the business of doing something for the American people. Let's get to the business of actually doing something to help secure the border instead of, their political stunts.
To that point, Congresswoman, given that you have, again, Senator Lisa Murkowski in Politico quoting, I have just not seen anything that the House has presented to us that would rise to an impeachable offense of high crimes and misdemeanors. How do Democrats in the House and maybe some like-minded Republicans who are sitting quietly in the back in the corner in the dark, they won't really come out and stand with you, going to try to show to the American people how much of a farce this really is and really make the case, as you just did? Well, in the Senate, when it gets there, this is what's going to happen. Sort of setting up the narrative, if you will, as this whole thing starts to roll towards out of the House and towards the Senate.
Well, the first thing I think is pretty effective is when you show the clips of Republicans themselves saying they want to delay this for political purpose, or when you see people like Mitt Romney on television and those clips saying that this is because Donald Trump has basically called and said, don't do anything on the southern border. I think those are very powerful for constituents to see that. Second of all, I think it's really important when we convey to the American people what Democrats have tried to do on the southern border and how Republicans have stopped it or they're not funding it. One of the things that I recently just looked at this morning was a chart to see where Republicans and Democrats have voted on passing funding for DHS. This is for border security. This is for the men and women on the front lines. And what was shocking to see is from Obama to the current time, Democrats, it is Democrats who have voted in greater numbers to fund DHS than Republicans have. So it's continuing to share the narrative that it's Republicans who are walking away from the table. And let's not, of course, forget the Senate deal. Right. There was a Senate deal put together. It was one of the toughest border security measures put on the table. And it was Republicans who walked away from the deal, saying, we don't even want to talk about it. We don't want to do anything. Why? Because Donald Trump said, don't do anything. I need this to continue to be a problem. This is just continuing the anti-immigrant narrative, that they're not serious about the border and they don't want to do anything. And we know the American people, they want a balanced approach. They want us not just to enforce, they want also pathways to citizenship. And I think that's the key. Even look at the Suozzi race. That's what he did. He ran ads talking about those pathways. So let's do that. Let's have that conversation. Republicans aren't serious.
Let's talk about the president's interview on Univision. He used the occasion to say that he plans to issue an executive order to dramatically limit the number of asylum seekers who can cross the southern border. What is the CHC's position on that?
Well, first of all, I went back and I looked at the interview. And the question was asked whether he was going to be using executive orders to do such things. And he said that he didn't know he had that authority to do that, and that Congress would have to act, and that they're looking at executive actions. And I think that's the key. The president always looks at what he can do with executive actions. The Hispanic Caucus has actually sent over a list of suggested executive actions the president can take to help address the southern border. Of course, most of those are pertaining to more legal pathways, because we know when you provide more legal pathways and it's more orderly at the southern border, that's what the American people want. So we hope that we don't have to go down this road of looking at Trump-era policies to do just that, because Trump did that in 2018. He used his 2-1-2 authority to limit folks, and what we found was it really didn't do much of anything on people crossing over. And two, the court struck it down.
So Axios was apparently told that while it's not final, such an executive order as the one that was described that the president spoke about in this interview is likely by the end of this month, the end of April, and that this particular provision would restrict the ability of people coming to the border to claim asylum, and it does not require congressional approval. So if, in fact, that is what the president is and his aides are mulling over, what is the Congressional Hispanic Caucus's position on that?
What would be a mistake? And this is the 212 authority I just mentioned, because we know it's been done before under Trump. This is a Trump-era provision that's been used. And he used it in 2018, and they didn't really see much of a difference on people coming over and the numbers. So it hasn't worked in the past, and then the court struck it down. So, this is a situation where I think the American people want to see action, and Congress and can't get it done, so the president's hands are kind of tied, and he's trying to figure out ways to help address and work on the southern border so that we can reduce the numbers. But this would not be the route if 212 is really what they're looking at. It would not be the route to do it, and we would not support that.
I want to stick with the Hispanic Caucus for a moment. I believe it was last week they put out a statement to sort of tamp down the noise here in Washington, because I would say it's not something that's a groundswell out in the country.
No, it's not.
So let's just be clear about what it is and what it isn't, right? This is the noise inside the Beltway about Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor to resign, to step down, because they're concerned about her health and all these other issues. Speak to us about that a little bit, and why it's important, why it was important for the Hispanic Caucus to make it clear about how they view the first Latina on the court and her service.
Well, she's been a jurist who has been strong. She has been thoughtful. She's been great. I've seen no indication otherwise on why anybody would suggest that she step down. And to have somebody who's 78, a senator, suggest that is a little rich. Especially considering he was 76 when he decided to run for a 6-year term. Like, really?
Right.
And, stop telling Latino women what to do. You're talking about a woman who is just super smart and sharp. She can make decisions and decide when it's time for her to retire.
Well,
there it is.
There it is. California Congresswoman Annette Berrigan, thank you very, very much for your time this morning.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.